friends, my name is Giggles, or you can call me Michelle Renee. This is a quick announcement. I am now taking donations. I've started a coffee page, so the link to that is in the description. You can now, air quote, buy a coffee for me. It's not so much about buying me coffee as it is about supporting the channel. I'm going to start being more proactive on here, bringing you guys more narrations, roleplay audios, comedy skits, original cartoons, character-inspired lookbooks, God Talks, Theater Talks, so much more. Each donation is $3, but feel free to donate more or less if you feel the need to donate at all. Every donation is greatly appreciated, and thank you so much for continuing to watch and support. For as long as I could remember, I wanted to be a writer. I didn't know what kind of writer, though. Novels, screenplays. I didn't care, I just enjoyed writing. I kind of lacked in the friends department growing up, so to compensate, I made my own. I acted out many scenes in my head, but not like with an imaginary friend or anything. I didn't see anyone else. I would simply picture things happening. I tried to explain this to my mother one day when she saw me, as she put it, zoning out, and she had chuckled. Sounds like you have a very active imagination. Maybe you should try putting it to use. So, I started making picture books, writing out my stories and trying to draw them, trying being the key word. I may have improved immensely as a writer, but the best I could manage even now were stick figures. Good thing I didn't want to be an artist. No, my dream to be a writer is what got me in the situation I'm in now. Trapped in a bathroom, in a stranger's house, contemplating my options. Even now, in the moment, I know that sounds ridiculous. If I were you, I'd be shaking my head and rolling my eyes. How stupid do I sound, honestly? Well, it all started off casually, really. I had been looking online for jobs, anything to put off working on my own book. I had a serious case of writer's block, and every time I looked back at what I had written, I just wanted to trash the entire thing and start over. I tried to tell myself it was a first draft. It's okay if it's stupid. There's supposed to be the stupid version of what turns out to be a great novel. I couldn't get over it, though, as I had always been a perfectionist. I wanted the first draft to be perfect, and then the finished copy to somehow be an enlightened perfection. Ridiculous, I know. Again, this is why I'm trapped in the bathroom. I saw an ad online for a man looking for someone wanting to help him write his novel. He had the ideas all done, but he had trouble putting the ideas to paper. He was a thinker, he said, not an author. He also commented that he had other books out there already, and so I Googled his name. Nothing. Red flag, right there. Do you see it? Waving furiously? Not me, idiot. And so I sent him an email. Hello, Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith. Holy crap. I wish I could go back in time and slap myself. Mr. Smith. Hello, Mr. Smith. My name is Charlie Williams. I saw your ad and I thought I would contact you. I am an aspiring author myself and thought I would see what kind of work you were offering. Charlie. I mean, he had other published works that clearly he could write, so what did he want? Help? A beta reader? I mean, an editor could help him clean his stuff up, so clearly he didn't need that. It was half a day before I got a bing on my phone saying I had an email. I had several others all day, 99% of which were all spam, but I had checked every single one in case it was him. This time, it was.
Hello, Mr. Williams.
I should have probably clarified I was a woman. Oops. People often did that with a name like Charlie. It wasn't short for anything like Charlotte, which others thought. It was just Charlie.
I am looking for a ghostwriter. I've applied them with my other works. I would rather not list my proper name here. I will obviously introduce myself at a later time, if you do indeed get the job. You will also need to sign a confidentiality agreement, and I'd like you to send me several examples of your work so I can see if you qualify.
Now, I never liked sharing my work with people I didn't know. I was slightly paranoid it would get stolen. It was probably a silly fear, but it was mine just the same. I hesitated and sent him one of my published short stories from my old college literary magazine. He couldn't steal what was already in my name, I figured. He wrote back the next day, and around noon, he said he liked my work. It had a certain flair he was looking for and would like to meet me on Saturday to talk things out in person. I still hadn't mentioned I was a woman. I felt a little safer meeting with him if he thought I was a man. He obviously wasn't planning to kidnap me and hold me hostage in his murder basement if I was a man. Not that killers don't kill men, obviously they do, but they usually preyed on unsuspecting, naive women online, I figured. Not men. So I agreed to meet him. If I get out of this, it's okay if you slap me. Someone should smack the sense back into me. He had given me his address. He told me it was residential, and I did know the town. Same state, not local. It'd be a couple hours' drive, but I would go, obviously. Ugh, so stupid. When Saturday rolled around, I got up early so I could make my appointment with Mr. Smith. Now, I did tell people that I would be going. I wasn't going to end up like that dude from that movie with James Franco. You know, the one where the guy cuts his arm off because he trapped himself and no one knew where he was. No, I was a genius for a total idiot. I took my laptop and my phone charger. I figured I could take notes and record anything else on my phone's memo app. Seemed simple enough. Now, I just want to interrupt and add that I never intended to be a ghostwriter. I admit it, I'm a bit of an attention whore. Not in everyday things, but when it came to my writing, I loved the praise. I loved being told it was good. I loved being told that I was good. It was just that I wanted to do it professionally for so long that it was nice to hear. I was humble accepting my admirations, but on the inside I was doing a little dance. The drive out to Mr. Smith's was a pleasant one. I lived in the city. I didn't know it was the city until I went out to rural places, like this one. Where I lived was all houses, but if you asked me, I considered the city a place with a lot of hustle and bustle, a place with skyscrapers and businesses. But when I drove out to places like this, I knew I lived in the city. I could high-five my neighbor if we both leaned out of our windows far enough. In places like these, you were lucky if you could even see your neighbor's house. Mr. Smith's house was just like that, but man, was it grand. Beautiful brick, 3 stories, perfectly mowed lawn and trimmed bushes, and he even had several flower patches up against his house. Dude must have sold all the books, I thought as I pulled up. Most of the nerves I had felt driving over that morning had vanished. You would think as an author I would know better than to judge a book by its cover, but clearly not. After all, if he was luring me into his murder basement, he wouldn't be doing it in the richy part of the city. His murder basement wouldn't be in a house that looked like this. I grabbed the satchel bag I packed myself and made my way up to the front door. He had a fancy knocker on the hardwood door and a doorbell. I hesitated on which to use when a voice came out of nowhere. It was a bit staticky, and I realized then that what I thought was a doorbell was really an intercom.
Hello? Who's out there?
Oh, Mr. Smith? I don't know how he knew I was at his door, and I admit that I had jumped when his voice broke the silence. It's me, Charlie Williams?
Charlie Williams?
He paused for a long moment, and I guess he must have been trying to come to terms with this information.
You're not a man?
No, sir. Sorry, I didn't realize you thought I was. I had lied. I thought maybe you had made a spelling mistake in the email. I should really know better by now. People make that mistake a lot.
Is it Charlotte Williams, then?
No, sir, it's Charlie. It's, not short for anything, just Charlie.
I suppose you'll do.
Before I worked out a reply, the intercom went dead, and I figured he must have walked away from it. I shifted awkwardly on my feet, and in under a minute, the door opened. He was an older man, compared to me, probably in his mid-40s. He had salt and pepper hair and was muscular with broad shoulders. His t-shirt showed off his arms and tattoos, and I think they were military. I'm sorry if I disappointed you, by not being a man.
What? Oh, nah, kid, it's fine. I just assumed, that's all.
He waved his hand through the air, indicating to me that he didn't care one way or the other, and then gestured for me to follow him. I did.
The name's Simon. Brigsby.
He informs me as he shuts the door behind us.
You, ever heard of me?
I mouthed his name to myself and tried to decide if I had. I didn't think so, and I had confessed as much. He explained that he wrote mysteries and crime novels. Interesting. Not my genre of expertise. I was into fantasy and some sci-fi, but I could make it work.
I keep my notes in my study, but I set them up in the dining room. I figured we could spread stuff out on the table, get a better look at things.
Sounds great. I brought my laptop, and I thought if you wanted to dictate anything specific, I could just record it on my phone. I followed him into the dining room, taking note of everything he had set up. It was a beautiful house. I was jealous. Maybe if I was lucky, I could make enough to get into a position like this. He probably had other money, I rationalized. If he had made all this money just selling books he didn't really write, I feel like I would have heard of him. So, what's your book going to be about?
Before that, I'm gonna need you to sign this.
He pushed a piece of paper my way, and I set my bag down. It was the confidentiality agreement he had spoken of. I only gave it a once-over before I signed it, as I just wanted to know what I was going to be writing. Pro tip? Don't ever do that. This isn't a stupid terms and conditions pop-up by like Apple where you just check a little box and click agree. No, this is a legal contract. Read those. He seemed pleased as I signed and took it back and slid it into one of his file folders. He then began to explain his story. It was another crime drama, but he wanted to give it a supernatural twist. I jokingly asked him if he wanted something with like vampires or werewolves, and he rolled his eyes at me and shook his head. Then, he told me it was about demons. He was very serious then. I had written it off as part of his military background. Those are cool.
These ones aren't supposed to be cool. They're supposed to be frightening.
Well, I'm sure when they're written down, they'll be very frightening. The fantasy element of his story was right up my alley. I could work with that. Between the two of us, I thought this may not be so bad.
The story is about how a possessed man gets away with murder.
So, is he going to get away at the end? I asked curiously, having my laptop booted up by this point and opening up Word so I can start to take note.
Yes, he has before and he will again.
Do you think this is going to be a multi-part project, or just end up with the readers surprised he gets away?
I don't know. It may end up being a series.
He smiled back at me, and though he got the typical lines around his eyes, the smile didn't reflect there.
I suppose we'll have to see how this one goes, eh?
I suppose so. But if you've sold other books in the past, I figure you must be doing well. I smiled anyways. How else was I supposed to react? Call him out on it? Hey dude, why doesn't your smile reach your eyes? No.
I've done all right. I've been lucky with who I've chosen before.
If you don't mind me asking, how come you aren't using the same writer as before?
We had a bit of a falling out. They wanted more credit for my work.
Well, a lot of it is their work too. That was what I had thought and wanted to tell him. Instead, I went with something nicer. Oh, I suppose I can understand that. I never saw myself as a ghostwriter either.
No one really does.
He smiled again, but this time it did show in his eyes. Genuine amusement. We talked for a little while after that. He told me the plots of his other books, and about his life in the military before he decided to retire with that and take up writing. It would help with his mild PTSD, his therapist told him. Nothing chronic, he explained, but most people came back with some sort of stress or baggage.
Now for this book, I got the who, what, where, and the when. But none of that elegant wordplay y'all proper writers do. You know, to really do it myself. Always sounds too simple when I write it myself. Like a darker version of Spot the Dog. The murderer grabs his knife. He stabbed the victim. He enjoyed it, you know, that kind of stuff.
I understand. I have a lot of friends and family ask me to read things over for them, especially the younger cousins still in school. Want to make things sound good if the grade is worth enough. My dad makes me read his work emails to make sure they sound good for his bosses. I laughed softly and tried to convince myself ghostwriting would be a lot like that. I may not get the credit, but I would know that I made something sound better and polished.
So for this book, what I'm thinking is, the guy was a former cop, yeah? And he gets himself a case where the last killer was possessed. And it gets transferred from one killer to the next. So, 'cause the cop killed him, he gets possessed by the next, you understand?
Yes. I was clicking away on my keyboard as he spoke.
And now, since the demon's been around for a long time, it knows how to get away with murder. I mean, something alive that long, it has to be smart. And don't forget good at what it does.
Makes sense to me.
Now, I'm thinking he needs to feed on living flesh. That's why it kills. Well, besides enjoyment. So I figure it's got to keep its victims alive and not have people looking for them.
Right.
So what it does, you see, it takes its victims hostage and does something like cut off their body parts, you know, and let them rot while placing them outside, and maybe upturn some dirt or something like that to make it seem like they've been killed and buried, and perhaps some wild animal made off and ate the rest of the body.
Huh. That's a pretty cool idea. I glanced up at him, and he had another genuine smile cross his face.
I like to think so. I mean, cadaver dogs wouldn't have anything to find because the victim's really trapped in the killer's basement, and everyone else just assumes because they lost an arm or a finger or whatever that they're long gone.
He went on to explain that the demon killer would stalk their victims, learning their pattern, and would get them at their most vulnerable. Typically, on a road surrounded by trees where no one would hear the scene play out, or where cameras would be. The car would then be driven away from the original scene and burnt to a crisp to hide away any evidence. It would be harder to find if you couldn't pick a specific crime scene, whether it be the now empty frame of the car or the original spot the car was stopped. The place where the car was dumped would also be a good place to hide the body part later for authorities to find. It would make them think they were on the right path. The demon got enjoyment from manipulating people. He said that it would also take victims if they came to the possessed person's house. Why not? That just made its job all the much easier. I'm surprised you're adding the supernatural thing. Like, it sounds like you're really good at this crime stuff.
Well, it's different, and I've been reading up on it lately.
Oh, online? I could go on the sites myself.
No, none of that. I know that's where I put an ad, but I'm old-fashioned. Got some books in the study. You can take a look at them if you'd like.
I can grab them when I go. I mean, if it's all right that I borrow them.
Of course.
Yeah. Have you ever been so into what you're doing that someone could run around you naked doing a disco dance and you would be completely oblivious to it? That had to have been where I was mentally throughout all of this. Sitting here now, I can see all the red flags, and I keep telling myself between the panic that this is how horror movie characters die. If I die, I deserve it for being so stupid. There's a loud bang from the other side of the bathroom door, and I look around quickly. I grab the trash barrel sitting in there and flip it upside down. I was lucky he had a shower seat, and I put it sideways on top of the barrel to block the handle. And I slid the legs behind the toilet beside the door. He couldn't push it open until the legs of the chair broke. We continued to talk for several hours. I made notes, and he even gave me lunch. He didn't eat. He wasn't hungry, he had said. When the light began fading, and he had to get up to turn on the light in the dining room, I decided to tell him I should go. I didn't know the roads well enough to want to drive them at night, so I packed up my things. He was going to finish filing away his own notes and write a few more last-minute details for me to take with me. In the study were piles of books. I was surprised. I thought that it would be as meticulously clean as the rest of his home, but it was actually a mess. Everyone has a weakness, I figured. I flipped through the books, most of which were reference books on criminal law, cold cases, and the like. That made sense to me, considering his past works. 4 books in particular caught my attention, however, and I stared at them for a good long while. The first 3 appeared to be his other works, and one was a spell book. I assumed it was research for this novel, so I packed it into my satchel without looking at it. The other 3 were just strange. The covers didn't match their titles. They looked like they were bound in leather, but not quite. Weird. Then something triggered off in my head, an epiphany. There was no way they were made out of... But no. What else would it be brushing against my finger? I took a deep breath and shut my eyes when I flipped the cover over to look at the back of the book in my hand. I actually made a small sign of the cross with my free hand and cracked an eye open slowly. Oh my God. There was a nose on the back of the book. They weren't leather-bound books. They were made from human skin. I dropped it to his desk with a thud, and when I rushed out of the study, I felt sick. He was standing out in the hall and seemed to be making his way up to me. "Bathroom?" I asked him quickly, and when he merely pointed, frozen at the end of the hall like a statue aside from the movement of his hand, I ran. No, I sprinted as fast as I could to that bathroom, and I didn't look back. When I got there, I locked the door, collapsed to the floor, and that's where I am now. Well, except he's trying to break in now. He's banging on the door asking if I'm alright, but his hand is hitting the wood far too hard, and I know that he knows those books were in that study, and I also know that he must know that I came across them. With trembling hands, I dig around in my bag and pull out the spell book that had been with the others on the desk. I flip through it swiftly until I come to the page he had folded over, and it made sense now what I was doing there. So you want to summon a ghostwriter. The title was so casual for what the page actually detailed. It essentially broke down to find a writer, kill them, make a book bound in their skin, and perform the following summoning spell to summon that writer's spirit to the book that cased their skin. The pages would then write a new book, which the person doing this spell could write down and pass off as their own. He wanted to kill me, skin me, and... No. This is insane! There's no way this stuff works!
Charlie, are you alright? Just come on out of there, okay?
I wanted to tell him just a minute. It didn't come out. Could this really be happening to me? I mean, the supernatural wasn't real. But that didn't mean he couldn't skin me alive and make a book out of me anyways just because he thinks it works. A part of me rationalized. I went with that side. I look around his bathroom, and the windows were too small to escape from. I could try, but they were the long, skinny kind, and there was just no way my stupid boobs were going to make it. Panic seeps in as the door slams, and the trash barrel fell over. The chair was right where I positioned it, stuck in place for the moment. I slapped my face several times, trying to recompose myself and think. A weapon. Something. I started digging around through his medicine cabinet. Nothing. I had been hoping for a straight razor, but it seemed he used a regular 5-bladed one. I moved to the shower. There wasn't even a loofah on a stick. Oh God, oh no. What do I do now?
Charlie, open this door!
Each word was said with a thud of one of those large shoulders smashing into the door. It hits me when I spin around to look at the door. I see my shadow. Shadow. Light. Glass. Glass was sharp, sharp as a weapon! I hastily close the toilet seat and jump up onto it, reaching for the light above my head. It would be dark, but that might actually help me out. I unscrew the outer casing and let it fall to the floor. It cracks into several pieces, and I grab the biggest one, and I wait. I didn't know if it was safer to unblock the door and go to him, or let him tire himself out and come to me. I just went for the former. 10 long, grueling minutes passed, and finally the chair legs cracked, and then shortly after, the door flung open. I think he expected me to be cowering in fear, because when I sprung at him from my hiding spot, he jumped. His eyes were wild and dark. They were brown eyes, but right now they looked like two jet black coals. I stabbed him in his shoulder and then drew back again to go for his neck. He was ready for me on the second swing, and he caught me by the wrist. His response to being stabbed was to slam his forehead into my nose, and I felt and heard it break simultaneously. There was blood everywhere between his shoulder and my nose. I was seeing stars as I felt him trying to drag me in the hallway. He was doing well, and I knew if I let him get me out of this bathroom, I was dead. I lashed out, flailing my free arm and swinging my legs. The hand that still managed to somehow hold the glass from the light was tight in my hand, and I was getting a few new gashes and cuts on his arm.
You little whore.
One of his massive hands was making its way to collide with my face. Just before he could, I squeezed my eyes shut, and my foot manages to hit him right in the groin. He releases my wrist and fell to his knees. Without a thought other than survival, I swing the glass shard at him again. And again, and again, and again. I don't remember stabbing him that many times. I don't remember slitting his throat. I don't remember calling the police. I must have, though, as they came into the bathroom where I am sitting in my own blood. His blood. So much blood. I'm still holding the glass that saved my life and ended his, still clutched in my hand. A young officer finally manages to talk me into dropping it. The EMT behind him is mumbling something about shock, but I'm barely listening to him. Whoa, wait. There's a new voice now, whispering softly in my head. I was almost a ghostwriter, it said. Instead, it would seem, I was face to face with the very same demon I was to have been writing about, had this job been real.